After 33 years, I think 2% from the government is an insult by the time I get to the age of 60. By that time, I would have contributed 43 of my years to the public service. And I think it's very, very unfortunate that the government would be offering 2% to me and to the other public officers. Our constitution states that we're entitled to 25%. And after myself working for 33 years, I think 2% from the government is an insult by the time I get to the age of 60. By that time, I would have contributed 43 of my years to the public service. And I think it's very, very unfortunate that the government would be offering 2% to me and to the other public officers after they get to age 60.
I believe that we as teachers, we work very hard. Sometimes we go the extra mile to ensure that the children are being prepared for whatever assessment they have, whether it's internal or external examinations. And sometimes when I go to work and I see those commitments, it really touches my heart. And over my years of education, there has been a lot of teachers that has been positively impacting my life, and I believe that me coming out here today would be a sign of gratitude to them for all they have done for me over the years.
Yes, well, the public was satisfied that, everybody at the children going to school. The teachers have a hard task just like any working person, so they should get what they have to get. So
we stand together and we say that we must be respected. Our country seems to be a leadership of disrespect. It started with the disrespect of nurses and doctors, and it continues with the disrespect of all public officers.
Well, I'm disappointed I'm not in the classroom, but then again, we have to stand up as teachers because this has an impact not just for now, for the future. Those children coming up in the school system, they would be public servants as well. When they retire, what are they going to accept that 2% with cost of living rising? It's not about color, it's not about politics, it's about the issue. And the issue is for people to remain in the system and contribute to Grenada. We need to give a decent pension, a decent gratuity. And I think 25% says it all.
To take such a drastic action with students not having school, so to speak, I say that the government should do something better. The government should definitely try to be more adequate with what they're offering.
Yes, folks, that was the environment under the NNP administration. Lest we forget, during the NNP time in office, every Monday morning, teachers, public officers generally were on the street demonstrating, protesting, fighting for what was rightfully theirs. That was the environment under the Keith Mitchell-led administration. 2 years pass and people tend to forget quite quickly. 2 years is a long time to remember those things, to be fair. But I'm saying to you, the teachers, the public officers, they went out on the streets and they marched demanding their pension and their gratuity. They wanted the general public to know that they are concerned about their future. They are concerned about retirement. They do not want to retire and go back into poverty. But you knew very well what NNP did to them thereafter. The NNP administration docked the salaries of the hardworking teachers and public officers. So you saw the protest, the demonstration. They went out there and they demonstrated for their pension and their gratuity. What the NNP did after that was to dock their salary. The NNP administration to go into their salaries, take their money around Christmas time to hurt them.
It will be like Christmas in July for some teachers as government makes good on its promise to repay.
But the NDC administration came into power and they paid the dock salaries. In fact, that was one of the first fulfillment the first achievement of the NDC administration to pay back the hardworking teachers their docked salaries, and then they paid the pension.
Salaries that were docked in 2018 during the new government's. It will be like Christmas in July for some teachers as government makes good on its promise to repay salaries that were docked in 2018. During the new government's first post-cabinet press briefing on Tuesday, Minister for Education, Senator the Honorable David Andrew, told members of the media that $1,264,000 will be paid to teachers at the end of July. The previous administration had docked the salaries of teachers who were involved in protest action and remained away from school for nearly 2 weeks. Minister Andrew said the repayment can help to enhance the relationship between the ministry and the teachers, as well as the level of production in the classroom.
In keeping with the spirit of what the Prime Minister indicated, we believe it's not going to be productive to have an adversarial climate with our employees, with our workers. And we know that the docked salaries created a very adversarial atmosphere within our ministry and the education sector for a pretty long time, and no doubt that had cost us quite a bit. So we are happy to announce that this month end, the docked salaries to the tune of $1,264,075.78 will be paid to persons who were unduly docked their salaries.
Minister Andrew says his ministry has been working closely with the Ministry of Finance to meet the financial obligation. He explained that the refund will be administered 1 day after the processing of regular salary payments. Both payments will be disbursed by July 26th.
Right, so we know that the NDC came into power, and one of the first olive branch offered to the unions, to the workers, was the paying of the docked salaries. So the hard workers, the hard working teachers and public officers, they got back their money that the NNP administration took from them. And then the NDC paid the pension. So they were demonstrating for their pension and their gratuity. The NDC came into power and paid the pension in full, the pension and the gratuity, $75.1 million. That is important. It's so important that you remember those good things that the NDC did for workers in this country. So NNP refused to pay public officers who retired their pension and their gratuity. The NDC came in and they paid them their gratuity and their pension in full. All right? The NNP docked the salaries of public officers for going out and protest and demonstrate for their pension and gratuity. The NDC came in and they paid them back the money that the NNP administration took from them.
You see, when I see that figure, you see, you're happy for life. And I want to thank the Prime Minister because he didn't have to do it. I work with him. But I want to thank you that today I am here and I feel happy in my spirit. Very happy. Thank you, thank all of you.
That was an emotional thank you by senior pensioner Bernadette Jeremiah, a former health officer thanking the government of Grenada. Prime Minister Dickon Mitchell handed her retroactive pension payment at a press conference on Wednesday afternoon. Ms. Jeremiah is among the over 500 Grenadians that are eligible to receive their pension payment in the month of November. The Prime Minister told Grenadians in July that the data coming out from the Ministry of Finance is that the retroactive payment is going to be in the region of EC $60 million. However, this has moved up to $75 million.
Now, this is no small feat. The transfer of $44 million from the state to the citizens, and eventually the projections is that as much as $75 million will be transferred from the state to the citizens, is perhaps the single largest transfer of wealth from the government to the citizens in the history of Grenada's post-independence. And so we have to appreciate that it is not just a symbolic gesture, but we are talking here fundamentally about the well-being of our citizens. If people work for 30, 40 years to build the state of Grenada, and we let them retire into poverty, it is the state of Grenada that we are doing a service.
So far, the Ministry of Finance has disbursed a total of $44.1 million to over 300 pensioners, with the remaining persons expected to receive their pension by November 30th. Tonya Adams, head of the Pension Secretariat, gave an update on the payment.
Right. So we know that the NDC administration paid the pensioners, all the pensioners, and even those who died before receiving their pension and gratuity. The NDC paid the estate, the family members, all right, the beneficiaries, their lot of money, right, their portion, their amount, they got that. So that's a caring government. It is so important that you understand. The workers went out, they demonstrated for their pension and their gratuity under the Keith Mitchell-led administration. The Keith Mitchell-led administration refused to pay them their pension and gratuity. The NDC administration came in and paid all of them their pension and their gratuity. The NNP docked the salaries of public officers during their time in government. The NDC came in and they paid back that money to the teachers and the public officers. If the NNP had won that election, it would have been a different situation in terms of pension and gratuity. This is the method, this is the way the NNP would have gone about paying the pension to public officers.
The reinstatement of pension for public servants following a court ruling is estimated at $465 million as a one-off payment and an additional $120 million annually.
Right, so that was a blatant lie by the NNP administration. We later discovered it took government only $75.1 million to pay everybody their gratuity and everybody their pension. And government continues to pay the pensioners their pension every month. So that was a lie from the pit of hell from the NNP. They were trying to scare Grenadians into believing that the economy will crash if that happens. So they quote figures like 465 million is required to pay the pension, the gratuity, the lump sum, and the pension, and 120 million every year will be required to keep paying pension. That's a lie. That was a big lie.
However, Dr. Mitchell confidently said payments will begin later this year.
All entitled public officers appointed by the Public Service Commission who will retire in 2022 at the legally accepted retirement age of 60 will be paid their pension during this year 2022 when the budget is
right. So his method, his formula was the people who were going to retire in 2022, they would be paid, right? They were going to pay them. And that's a small amount of people, a small amount of retirees. They were going to pay them. The people who would retire in 2023, again, another small amount, they were going to be paid their pension. But the people who retired before 2002, and that's the greater amount, the huge amount of public officers who retired 8 years, 7 years, 6 years, 5 years, 4 years, 3 years before 2022. That's where the retirees were. In other words, that's the huge amount. They were not going to pay these people.
Being presented for 2023. At the end of 2022, Those public servants that will retire in 2023, the pension payment will be in the budget document that we will bring forth for that year. So those in 2023 will also be paid their payment, sisters and brothers. As regards to the pensions that are outstanding and are due to those who retired long before this year, we will have a phased approach for payment consistent with the national cash flow, and that will be announced shortly.
Right, so that's the scary part. So the folks who retired before 2022, and we talking about the majority of retirees, they were before 2022. They would be paid in based on the cash flow of the country, and it would be a phased approach, and they would announce it, sometime in the future. But that is the trick of the NNP. That is the trick. That was the method. That was the way in which the NNP was going to go about the payment of pension. But the NDC paid everybody their pension and their gratuity. That's remarkable. And sometimes you have to reflect on it. Sometimes you have to just think back a bit, do some retrospection, what it was and even what it could have been like. All right? That is so important. Very, very important. But thankfully, the NDC paid the pension, paid the gratuity, paid the doc salaries, and now the NDC, well, in fact, we heard from union leaders. They spoke about the pension. All right? They came out and they commended government on the pension.
This administration must be given tremendous applause and appreciation for the work they have done regarding the payment of the retroactive. Of course, we know about talks about pension reform, but we have ran the first leg and we have ran it well, and hundreds of people, in fact thousands, the whole of Grenada is happy for this, because the retirees, they also have families and people are looking on, and I think it does a lot for social and economic justice in this country that the retroactive payment has been made.
It's a joyous occasion for me. It's like a dream come true. I feel it for those senior citizens who for years had to struggle. Some of them had to go through demeaning job that they would have left, and had to find ways to survive. So it's really a good feeling for me. It's many prayers answered, and I commend the government for taking that bold initiative to pay the gratuity and pension.
Yes, and LL there made a very good point. That is, a lot of the people who retired then, they were retiring and then going back to work, to do security work, to do house work, right? Geriatric care, and cleaning and so on. They were going back to do other things at age 60, 61, 62, 63, 64, 65. But now they could retire with ease and in peace. They don't have to go and fight to do other work if they don't want to, you see? So we have to understand the benefits of pension payment and gratuity payment and collecting your pension every month. Some people underestimate the magnitude of this gesture, this goodwill to pensioners in this country. The NDC is a caring government, and they have demonstrated that time and time again. And they must be commended. They must be commended for that. So, the union leaders, they came out and they spoke there about, what the NDC administration did for the workers. But the NDC is not stopping there. The NDC knows fully well that we still have about 3,000 workers in government, the public service, who are on contract because the NNP administration introduced contract labor within the public service. Before, there was no contract labor within the public service, You're either permanent in the public service or you're not in it. But the NNP introduced contract labor in 1995, the NNP administration, within the public service. And as a result, people started working on contract and going home upon retirement with no pension and no gratuity. They then became poor or poorer, and they had to depend on the state to mind them until they die, to take care of them until they die, with the poor relief assistance and other things like that, the social safety net programs. That is exactly what happened, you know. And when you're on contract, you have no job security. You cannot go to the bank, you cannot go to the credit union, and they could fire you at any time. And in fact, the NNP designed the contract in such a way that they can make you go with 1 month's notice, in lieu of 1 month's notice. That's all. And they send you home. You cannot participate in demonstrations, protests. You cannot open your mouth. If you open your mouth too loud, they send you home. They sack you, as people would say. That is what the NNP was doing to public officers, you know. So now the NDC is working on setting up a pension for these contract workers, and then they would make them permanent within government, within the public service. They cannot do it before. Make them permanent and then set up a pension, because then the unions would say, no, we want them to fall under the 1958 pension laws. Although the union knows that that's not sustainable. All right? They know that it's not sustainable. In fact, the International Monetary Fund report is out. And the NNP already start criticizing it. All right? So that is out, and the NNP already start criticizing it, condemning it, because they hate the fact that the IMF gave Grenada some very good reviews. All right? They would recommend certain things to be done, but they would highlight the good aspects of how the government is managing the economy. But what the NNP did last night is to pull out some of the recommendations, some of the things that they highlight, right, in that report, and go on a particular program, the NNP program, and start condemning government, running mouth, wishing bad on the government. But if you go through the IMF report, you would see that the IMF, in speaking to the whole pension scheme, right, the intention to come up with a new pension scheme, they say, or they stated in that report, well-coordinated implementation of ongoing public sector reforms will help improve administrative efficiency and the fiscal outlook. The carefully sequenced regularization of public sector workers can help address persistent public administration capacity constraints. So what they're actually saying is that the phased approach to regularization of public officers is a good thing. The carefully sequenced regularization of public sector workers can help address persistent public administration capacity constraints. Completion of ongoing public sector functional review would help ensure new appointments are well aligned with public service priorities and can also help inform staff restraining needs. The planned establishment of a new defined contribution public sector pension scheme for new and regularized hires is important to avoid adding to the fiscal liability from the existing defined benefit plan. So, folks, this is no rocket science. What the IMF is saying, the government's approach to setting up this whole pension for contract workers and then making them permanent is a good thing. Let me read it again for you. The planned establishment of a new defined contribution public sector pension scheme, and that is what the government is looking to do, to have a contribution public sector pension scheme where the worker will contribute a certain amount and government will contribute a certain amount. And when they retire, they will get a pension. So that's the new set of workers. Those who are on contract that they will make permanent. So the IMF is saying that very clearly. The planned establishment of a new defined contribution public sector pension scheme for new and regularized hires or workers is important to avoid adding to the fiscal liability from the existing defined benefit plan, the existing pension plan. Recent parametric pension reforms of the National Insurance Scheme, including the phased increases in the contribution rates and pensionable age, should help reduce the system's actual imbalances. Nonetheless, additional efforts are needed to incentivize longer periods of contributions, increase participation of self-employed workers, and ensure benefits are based on current average wages. So that's a very good review from the IMF. The NNP will not talk about that. They will not highlight that, period, because in the long report, they would only look for the areas that the IMF speak to as recommendations, suggestions, what the government should do, and some of the risks, some of the downside to what is forecast in going forward. They would not tell you. They would not read those good things. They would not read also growth is projected to decelerate. So growth is projected to decelerate in the coming years as capacity constraints weigh on tourism growth and investment. The economy is projected to grow by 3.9% in 2024. The NNP will not tell you those things. So the economy is still growing. The economy is expected or projected to grow by 3.9% in 2024, right? Bolstered by another strong year of tourism activity, as hotels are already close to their high season capacity limits. Growth is projected to gradually slow to 2.7% over the medium term. The outlook is sensitive, though, to the level of CBI inflows. All right, the degree to which those flows finance new growth enhancing investment and the progress in completing the current pipeline of hotel projects, including non-CBI finance ones. The clearing of the large backlog of CBI applications from the recent surge is projected to result in a large 2024 budget surplus of 9.5% of GDP and further accumulation of government deposits. See, they would not tell you that. They have no interest in telling you those things. So the IMF report, it's out, right? It speaks to strong tourism, growth, arrivals. The Grenada's economy is estimated to have expanded by 4.4% in 2023, supported among the fastest growth in stopover arrivals in the Caribbean, and continued uptick into spending per tourist. Construction activity moderated as major capital projects were brought to completion and new projects linked to the recent surge in CBI were slow to execute. All right? So what they're saying is that they need to improve the execution rate of some of those CBI funded projects. And we know about the Kiwana Bay resort, what happened there, and other projects, but the government has since resolved that. And mind you, that happened under the NNP administration, right? So the report is lengthy. It is lengthy, but it's very positive towards the government, towards the government. There are some things that they need to enhance upon, build upon, and that's kind of normal from the IMF when they give their report. All right? But the NNP, as usual, they jump on it, criticizing, condemning. That's just the NNP. That's the way of doing things, which is really terrible. Because you have an opposition, all they do is criticize. All they do is condemn. All they do is to. That's all they do. All right? And you're going to hear more of that from them during the coming week. That's how they function. In fact, one of them last night saying to the listeners of that particular program, don't worry what the government will come and tell you about the IMF report, right? And they started criticizing and, saying that it's bad and bad review and so on. But here it is. All you need to do is to go and read it. Read the report. I just read excerpts from the report. It's kind of lengthy, but you can go and read it. Maybe you may not understand some of the wording, but you would get the gist of the report. All right? So that's kind of expected from the NNP. It's not surprising. No. So getting back to the message of pension. So the NDC is saying, well, we have 3,000 or so contract workers. They're in government. The NNP put them on contract. When they retire, they have no pension to get. They have no gratuity to get. And they can also be fired. They can also be sent home. They're on contract. So what the NDC is doing is coming up with a pension where the worker will contribute a certain percentage and the government will contribute a certain percentage. All right? The NNP is criticizing that. Well, the IMF is saying that's a good thing. That's a wonderful thing. But the NNP is criticizing, they're condemning that. And the NNP went into the IMF report and they're not going to read that out. They're not going to speak about that because it does not make the NNP look good. It makes the government look good. And as a result, they will not dare speak about that. But here it is. What the NDC is doing is a good thing for workers, the contract workers. You could imagine working on contract for 25 years, for 30 years. You retire at 60 and you have no pension and no gratuity to collect from your employer, the government of Grenada, all because the NNP hired you on contract in the government. It's amazing. So the NNP's out there arguing, saying, well, they can't do that and they can't do this. And if they do this, the unions going to take them to court. But the unions cannot take the government to court because the contract workers, they are not permanent within the public service. They are contract workers. The NNP made them contract workers so that they would have no job security, so that they could be fired at any time. They could fire them at any time, and so that they would retire without a pension and without gratuity. So unions cannot take the government to court. The government is putting a pension system for these people in place before making them permanent within the system. So all the people who are permanent as we speak within government, they're getting the pension as the court ruled. The 1958 pension laws cover them. When they retire, they're getting almost 70% of their last high salary, and they would collect the gratuity, whatever that amount be, they would collect that. And they would collect that pension until they die. But the people who are on contract now, if they retire, any one of them who retire now, they're going home with no pension and no gratuity. The NDC is trying to fix that. But the NNP is angry. They vex. They blue. They're out there on their programs saying all manner of things about the government. But when the NNP was in power, they did nothing for these people. They did nothing for them. They were going home empty-handed. And you know, if people are sensible, right? Forget all the hype, forget all the noise, right? Forget all what Sheldon Scott on the NNP program is saying. Forget what Francis Pay on that program is saying. Forget what Jenny Simon is saying. Forget what Carl Caton is saying. Forget what Panames, Devon Romain is saying. Right? Forget all of that. Forget what Kem Jones is saying. Forget about all of that. And just reason. Think. You have a situation where, one, you had workers who were working to build Grenada. Some of them gave 30 years of service to Grenada. They retire and they were not getting a pension and gratuity under the NNP administration. They were not getting that. They decided to go there and demonstrate and protest. What the NNP did, go in their salaries. The NNP administration went into their salaries and take their money, dock their salaries. The NNP said, you didn't work, you're not going to be paid. You went out and demonstrate for your pension and gratuity, we go punish you. So the NNP administration punished them. The NDC came into power and paid the pension that they were protesting and demonstrating for, paid the pension and the gratuity to all the workers who had to get their pension and gratuity. All right? And the NDC also paid the dock salaries, the money that the NNP administration took from the salaries of these hard workers, right? Teachers and public officers. Paid them back their money, $1.2 million. So $75.1 million and $1.2 million paid. But here it is. The NNP introduced contract labor into the public service. So you have somewhere between 2,005 and 3,000 workers within government who are on contract. When they retire, they have no pension to get. When they retire, they have no gratuity to get. They go home with nothing, back into poverty. And they have to depend on the poor relief assistance to make ends meet if they're lucky to get on that list. You hear me? They have nothing to get. The NDC is saying, no, we want these people to retire and get a pension and get a gratuity and get something to go home with. But we know that the pension system as it stands now cannot accommodate them, cannot sustain them. It will send the country into bankruptcy. So let us come up with a new pension system to take care of them. Those who are on contract, who will be made permanent within the government system. That is what the NDC is trying to do. So the NDC is caring, way more caring than the NNP. The NNP is a curse. The NNP never loved contract workers or the workers in the public service. The evidence is there to show. So you don't need to be a genius. You don't need to listen to anybody to reason this. Reasoning this thing is easy, like 1, 2, 3. So with the NDC putting out on the table their plans, the NNP start criticizing it and condemning it, saying all kind of things. And if you listen to those NNP lunatics and them on some of those programs, and surrogates and pundits and so on, and what they have to say about these things, you wonder if they went to school. I mean, they sung dunce, they sung barbaric, they sung foolish. But they're talking to an audience who don't even know better.
Government says consideration will be given to more than 3,000 contract workers in the public service under the new pension scheme. Cabinet has already approved the pension policy framework, and government will go to Parliament in October to enact legislation to create the new scheme, of which part of the contributions will come from government as the employer and part from the employees. Prime Minister Honorable Deacon Mitchell made the announcement on Monday during his administration's first in a series of town hall meetings to commemorate their second year in government. The new scheme will cater to workers with both contracts for service and off service.
We have committed that come the 1st of October, we will be going to Parliament to enact legislation to create a new pension scheme for these workers to ensure that they have the opportunity to have a pension. And I want to be clear, the established workers who have their pension established by the Constitution, we are not interfering with you. You have your pension, we restored it, we paid the retroactive, and we will continue to pay. But that is a pension that you do not contribute to. That is a pension that is funded entirely by the taxpayers of this country, you, me, all of us. We cannot continue in a situation where you have 3,000 persons who don't have pension. Because when they retire, what will happen to them?
Prime Minister Mitchell said this is the first step in the process to abolish the distinctions between contract for and off service, since they are all government employees and must be treated as such. He said the new pension scheme will be designed so contributions are transferable from one job to the other.
Anyone who is hired by the government thereafter has to come on to the pension system where they contribute, the government contribute, and when you retire, you can have your pension. If you move from the government to the private sector, you could take your pension with you. If you want to exit the government service, you can get the contributions you have made to that pension for yourself. Because I want you to understand something about the current pension system. It has certain rules. You have to work by a certain length of time before you could get it. So if you have to work for 21 years, and you want to leave at 18, you cannot leave because you will not get the pension. So we could be honest, some of us grind it out only because we want to make sure we get the pension. But we have to create flexibility. So the new pension scheme will ensure that if you want to leave, you can leave and you can take your contributions with you. You can transfer your pension to the private sector or to wherever you wish to go.
In 2022, government made pension and gratuity payments to qualified established workers.
Yes, yes, indeed. That's a good thing. That's a really good thing. But the NNP, they would continue to be out there criticizing, condemning. And when the NNP was in power, they did not do anything to help these people. But boy, I know what is going through Keith Mitchell's head. I know. Don't fool yourself. I know what's going through your head. Remember, just before the election, what he said? Man is what he ain't see. All right? Let's just go down a little memory lane. Remember him?
Political leader of the New National Party, Dr. Keith Mitchell, says the political leader of the National Democratic Congress, Deacon Mitchell, has done damage to the NDC brand.
I don't know how anyone could say that Deacon has brought a level of popularity to the NDC, and the scientific results is saying the same thing. This, I'm convinced that...
And folks, that's before the election, eh? That's before the election. That's not now. That's before the election.
He has damaged the NDC brand more than anything else. Honestly, I will not tell you otherwise. Maybe the next term, next time, you might see something different. How do you explain the scientific results that we have seen? That the NNP, after 2 terms and 2015, is still looking at that possibility or close to that.
In an interview broadcasted during Monday night's Beyond the Headlines by host Stevenson Worm, Mitchell expressed confidence that he will lead his party successfully to the polls and retake the controls of government following the general elections on Thursday.
We are going to do better, mark my word, better I'm not saying we can lose a seat or two. I am not saying that is not possible. But in numbers, the votes in several constituencies will be higher, relatively speaking, than 2018. Mark my word.
Dr. Mitchell admits this is the most energetic campaign he's ever seen in his political career.
One of two things. I think the newness of the leadership of the opposing party maybe scare enough people to the point that they don't know, but since they have not seen the individual perform in government, and they know the position of prime minister, very critical one. But I think the second reason, and probably more importantly, the fact that I'm saying one for the road.
At the same time, he points to disrespect he said meted out to him during the campaign.
Some people these days, you just come in running for office the first time and you're running old man this, and as if you have no respect. The first thing you do in this game is respect. You don't like my policy. That's okay, that's fine. You could criticize that. And you could say time for me to go, but start all sorts of names. That's not making sense.
Dr. Mitchell says there is a level of peace, confidence and positivity in the NNP camp ahead of the country's general elections.
I feel it's time for me to give other persons a chance while I'm able to continue to give that advice and physically be able to do so.
Dr. Mitchell maintains that this is the last time he is campaigning for a general election, as his intent is to bow out from frontline politics.
Yeah, that's Keith Mitchell there, that old nastiness. You know, what's wrong with that? So, you know what the result of the election was? The NNP was defeated badly. Badly. They got a good cocktail. All this scientific and scientific this and relics.
While the sting of this defeat hurts, and it really hurts, while the sting of this defeat hurts, and it really hurts, while the sting of this defeat hurts, and it really hurts, while the sting of this defeat hurts, and it really hurts.
Yeah, so he got defeated, and it was hurting him, and still hurting him up to this point. All right? Yeah, the man hurting. So, folks, let us continue to press on. I publish a list of 5 well-known corrupt acts that took place under the NNP administration, under the Keith Mitchell-led administration. It's on my Facebook page. I published that last night. You should go and take a look of that. It's on my Facebook page. All right, 5 well-known corrupt acts under the Keith Mitchell-led administration during their time in office. The Victoria Shrimp Farm, we lost $54.2 million there. The Grenada Broilers Inc., that's the Victoria Ghost Chicken Farm, we lost $18.63 million there. The Grenada Development Company Inc., Livera Resort Project, we lost $24 million there, meaning co-investors took that money and run away with it. The call center involving the cousin of Keith Mitchell, we lost $22.5 million there. The Ritz-Carlton Hotel and Golf Course, where E.J. Miller was given $22 million and he ran away with it. So in total, we lost, and that's just 5. I only published 5. We lost in excess of $140-something million to co-investors who con the Keith Mitchell-led administration, take the money, and run away with it. Almost $140-something million, just like that. Vanish, disappeared. They grab it, they thief it, they take it, and those co-investors run away with it. So that's something that you need to remind them. You can download it, you can go, you can share it. Importantly, you can share it, and that will be good. Share it on your pages so more and more people will get a greater appreciation of that. Because these same people want to come back in office. They want to come back and govern. But you have to remind them about all of these nasty things that took place under their time. All right? That's so, so important. Remind them. Please remind them. Folks, I want to wish you all the best. Have a good weekend. I will be back with you on Sunday, God's willing, starting from 1 in the PM to 2. Take good care. Have a wonderful day. So check out my page. It's on Facebook, Kem Jones. Look for Kem Jones, and you would see there, just as I did the list of achievements, right? 80 of them. You can go and check out my page. You would see that there. You can also look on Grenada Transformation Agenda on Facebook. You would see there too. So please share it or download it, save it on your phones.